Welcome back, Mensa. The Irish involvement in the Boer War is substantial, to say the least. Later I will concentrate on specific Irishmen, but today some facts about the Irish involvement in the Boer War. The number of generals who were born in Ireland but were serving in the British Army in the Boer War is extraordinary. The most famous, or infamous, of these was Field Marshal Horatio Herbert Kitchener, 1st Earl Kitchener, who was born in County Kerry. Kitchener served as Chief of Staff to Lord Roberts and then became Commander-in-Chief in the latter stages of the South African War. His strategies, including scorched earth tactics and concentration camps, marked a controversial yet pivotal period in the conflict. Other Irish-born generals who served in the Second Boer War were General Sir Thomas Kilkenny, born in County Clare. Major General Sir William Bernard Hickey, born in County Tipperary. Major General Sir Robert Porter, born in County Donegal. General Sir Brian Thomas Mahone, born in County Galway. Major General Sir Cornelius Francis Clary, born in County Cork. Lieutenant General Sir Lancelot Edward Kiggle, born in County Limerick. Whilst figures vary, a conservative estimate of the number of Irishmen serving in the British Army in the Boer War is more than 16,000. In particular, the bulk of those numbers was made up by the Irish infantry regiments, namely the Royal Dublin Fusiliers, the Royal Irish Fusiliers, the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, the Royal Irish Rifles, which later became the Royal Ulster Rifles, the Connaught Rangers, the Leinster Regiment, the Royal Munster Fusiliers. In addition, other Irish regiments that fought in the war were the 8th King's Royal Irish Hussars, who were light cavalry, the Inniskilling Dragoons, the Royal Irish Regiment, the Dublin City Imperial Yeomanry and Irish Yeomanry squadrons raised in Ulster, Munster and Leinster. The Royal Dublin Fusiliers took part in the Battle of Colenso in December 1899, which was a disaster for the British. As part of Buller's force, the Fusiliers suffered heavy casualties in the failed attempt to cross the Tuagela River. At the Battle of Spiouwenkorp in January 1900, the Fusiliers attempted to charge the summit in a disastrous assault. The British finally withdrew as they were exposed to Boer artillery on 3 sides and the ground was too hard to dig effective trenches. In the Battle for Tuagela Heights, a prolonged battle that stretched over 2 weeks in February 1900, the Fusiliers took part in a series of actions to break the Boer lines, enabling Ladysmith's relief. Following the Battle of Tuagela, Ladysmith was finally relieved on February 28, 1900. The Fusiliers entered the besieged town after 118 days of siege. The final major engagement involving the Royal Dublin Fusiliers was the Battle of Paardeberg, another drawn-out bloody battle of 11 days in February 1900. The Fusiliers assisted in surrounding the fighting general, Boer General Piet Cronje, who surrendered with his 4,000 men to the British under Lord Roberts. The defeat marked a turning point in the Second Boer War, and Cronje, along with his wife, was sent as a prisoner of war to St. Helena. The battle was significant because it was the first large-scale surrender of Boer forces, and symbolically it occurred on the anniversary of the Boers' victory at the Battle of Majuba in the First Boer War. The Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers also took part in the Battle of Colenso in December 1899. The Fusiliers took part in an unsuccessful river crossing, suffering severe losses. At the Battle of Tuagela Heights, the Fusiliers participated in the successful offensive that led to Ladysmith's relief. And on 28th of February 1900, the Fusiliers entered the town with the main relief force. The Connaught Rangers also took part in the Battle of Colenso in December 1899. The Rangers were ordered by a clearly incompetent officer to engage in a frontal attack, easy targets for the sharpshooting Boers. This ill-fated charge was repulsed by the Boers, with the Rangers suffering heavy casualties. At the Battle of Spiouwenkorp in January 1900, the Rangers bravely advanced under withering fire, but were forced to withdraw after heavy losses. The Rangers also took part in the battle for Tuagela Heights and were among the first troops into Ladysmith on 28th of February. The Rangers also participated in the decisive Battle of Paardeberg in February 1900, where they assisted in the siege and capture of General Cronje's force. The Royal Irish Rifles took part in the disastrous Battle of Storenburg in December 1899 in the Cape Colony. The British were ambushed after taking a wrong turn and marching for a lot longer than planned. The Boers had heard them coming, were able to get into position, and poured fire into the massed ranks of the British, who suffered very heavy losses and were forced into a shambolic retreat. The following is an extract from History of the Royal Irish Rifles by Lieutenant Colonel George Brenton Laurie, and is an account of the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Irish Rifles, at the Battle of Storenburg on December 10, 1899, during what was described in the British press as Black Week in the opening actions of the Boer War.
The two batteries, the 74th and the 77th, opened fire on the heights, but unfortunately, thinking the Royal Irish Rifles were the enemy in the uncertain light, commenced to shell them. The results were instantaneous. The first shell mortally wounded Colonel Eager and severely wounded Majors Seaton and Wellman, Captain Bell and several riflemen. The next few were equally deadly, and in a few seconds, to the surprise of the Boers, the whole of the infantry who had been lying close under the cliffs, ready to escalade them, were driven down the slope, vainly trying to avoid the deadly shrapnel of their own guns. The officer commanding the Northumberland Fusiliers ordered his battalion to retire to reform it, ready to support either attack. Some of the Royal Irish Rifles, hearing the order, moved with this battalion, assuming that it also applied to them.
The Royal Munster Fusiliers took part in the Battle of Margesfontein in December 1899 in the Cape Colony. Commanded by generals still using tactics from the Crimean War, when single-shot muskets were accurate only up to 300 yards, whereas the Boer with his repeater Mauser was deadly accurate at twice that distance, the British losses were appalling. After the Highland Brigade attack failed, the Munsters took part in a heavy frontal assault, leading to many casualties as they were mowed down by intense rifle fire. In the second stage of the war, when the heavily outnumbered Boers had to resort to hit-and-run tactics, the Munsters were patrolling vast areas of the Transvaal, as well as doing blockhouse garrison duty and supplying convoy protection in the Transvaal. The Royal Irish Fusiliers took part in the Battle of Paardeberg and participated in the rounding up of General Cronje's 4,000 surrendered Boers. The Leinster Regiment and the Royal Irish Regiment joined the war in its latter stages and performed what were essentially anti-guerrilla operations, namely patrolling, doing blockhouse garrison duty, and supplying convoy protection in the Transvaal. The 8th King's Royal Irish Hussars also joined the war in its latter stages, but before the guerrilla phase. The 8th Hussars took part in the relief of Kimberley in February 1900 in the Cape Colony. A fast cavalry advance under General French lifted the siege. In the Battle of Diamond Hill, in June 1900, the Hussars helped to push the Boers from their defensive positions east of Pretoria, the capital of the Transvaal Republic, which was captured soon thereafter. During the guerrilla phase of the war, when small Boer commandos engaged in hit-and-run tactics, the Hussars took part in a number of pursuits of Boer commandos across areas of the Transvaal. The 6th Inniskilling Dragoons' participation in the war was very similar to the Hussars. The Dragoons took part in the cavalry charge that liberated Kimberley, the hub of the diamond industry. For the remainder of the war, the Dragoons took part in chasing Boer forces during the Mobile Guerrilla War. The Royal Commission's figures detail the following British military casualties by May 1902. Killed and died of wounds, 7,726. Died of disease, 13,077. Wounded, 21,143. Missing and prisoners of war, 9,837. Total casualties, 51,783. Precise figures exclusively for Irish nationals serving in the British forces are not readily available. However, we do have credible estimates regarding Irish participation and related casualties. From an Ulster Scots historical reference, we learn that approximately 1,500 Irish soldiers from the British Army died in South Africa during the conflict. While this does not disaggregate by cause, for example, combat versus disease, it's the closest reliable statistic available. On the Boer side, Irish volunteers served notably in two named commandos. The Irish Transvaal Brigade, often referred to as McBride's Brigade when Major John McBride took over command, which consisted of an estimated 300 to 500 men. The 2nd Irish Brigade was formed in January 1900 by some former members of the Irish Transvaal Brigade. Former Late General Correspondent Arthur Lynch was appointed as the unit's commander. The brigade consisted of 150 commandos from a variety of ethnic backgrounds, including Irish, Australian, Greek, German, Boer and Italian members. Combined, the total number of Irish volunteers fighting alongside the Boers is estimated at approximately 500 to 700 individuals. The next time we meet, we will be looking at the Irishmen who fought with the Boers and the sentiment towards the Boers in Ireland itself. Until then, tot ziens.